The curse is real. The curse is absolutely real right now. And this is something that I don't think I ever mentioned during the World Cup, at least in my recent memory. I don't think I ever tell you guys that there is a curse about a team that won the World Cup the previous year and coming into the World Cup as a defending champ, and they get crash out in the knockout stage. It has happened in 3 of their last 4 tournaments. It happened in 2014 when Spain were the World Cup champions in 2010. It happened in 2010 when Italy were the World Cup champions in 2006. It happened back in 98 when France won the World Cup, and then in 2002 in South Korea they got knocked out of the group stage. And now, adding to that collection of curse is Germany, who won the World Cup back in 2014, but now are going to be eliminated in the 2018 FIFA World Cup. And despite the fact that we had this kind of curse that people talked about, it is still crazy how I can say that Germany is now no longer in the tournament and that they are eliminated in the group stage. And if my sources are not wrong, I think this is the first time that Germany has ever failed to make it out of the group. I mean, I don't know what to say. This was just insane. And, you know, I said in the preview about how there is just, with Group F right now, there is just so many things, so many crazy scenarios that can happen. And one of the crazy scenario is that Germany could be knocked out. And even one of the more crazier scenario is that Mexico could have knocked out, even though they had 2 wins in this game. Or not 2 wins in this game, but in this tournament. And they almost did too, which, of course, I'll get to it. But talking about this match between South Korea versus Germany, well, for whatever reason, the Germans once again started slow. They just also looked very uninterested at times, and they weren't clinical once again. I mean, this performance by the Germans was very similar to the first 2 performances against South Korea. And eventually South Korea scored in the 92nd minute. Kim Young-gwen scored that goal, and then Hong Min-sun, of course, scored the goal after a long ball was lofted up, and Germany was putting their goalkeeper Manuel Neuer up for a corner, if I remember, and basically Hong Min-sun basically tapped it into the empty net. Something you kind of see hockey very often, where, you know, right near the end of the game, usually if there's they pull the goalie out, and then the team that is currently down like a man temporary will just slot it into the empty net, and that's exactly what happened. But in many ways, obviously, there's a lot of shock about Germany now getting knocked out of the World Cup, and there's definitely a lot of blame to talk about in terms of how in the world did the Germans fail in this World Cup, and there are a combination of it. I know the most obvious reason is the fact that Leroy Sané, and how if he was with this squad, would it definitely made a difference? And my answer to that is yes. I think he would have made a difference. I mean, I think you could argue maybe Sané could have started in this squad or even come off the bench and have some pace on that wing area. But it's just not that Sané is the only reason why the Germans failed this World Cup. When you look at these 3 games, and when you look at Jogi Löw trying this kind of ticky-tacky kind of style of play, something that Pep Guardiola used to do, it seemed like teams are starting to figure out the system. And the thing about this German team is that not only teams are figuring out this ticky-tacky system, but it's also the fact that they did not play it very professionally in terms of ticky-tack system that they try to use. I mean, if you go back to the first game, you just look at how bad the passing was from Germany. It was so poor, and that when you use the ticky-tacky system, the number one thing you have to do is you have to make some good passes, and you have to make sure that when you play that kind of tactics, you have to make sure guys can able to pass with fruition, and that's is exactly what Germany did not did in the first game, and you could argue it they did not do the same thing in the third game too. And the other thing that you could also blame Germany failure is the fact that they look absolutely lackluster in terms of the goal scoring department, and that is something that is quite incredible because you would think that with this German team, and with Timo Werner now basically being the new kind of striker and kind of the replacement, or I wouldn't say replacement, but it's kind of like their old striker Miroslav Klose basically passed the torch off to Timo Werner, and Timo Werner basically could be the next big thing and the next big striker that is gonna take over the Klose role. But it just never seemed like that was the case. In fact, Timo Werner were rarely been mentioned throughout this World Cup. He had a very quiet World Cup, and when he does have some chance to basically put it into the back of the net, he usually puts it wide. And that has been the story for this German national team, is that so many guys that are supposed to score goals in this team are not putting those balls into the back of the net. And granted, that's why they only scored 2 goals in this tournament. So, with Germany knocked out of the World Cup, so does South Korea, because, even though South Korea won this one because Sweden won, and they need some crazy kind of scenario to get in. But if there is a team, and out of all the team that got eliminated in this World Cup, and heading into this final day with nothing to play for because they already got confirmed their elimination back in the second match day, South Korea is probably the proudest in terms of going out of this tournament, because this is a historic win for South Korea. I mean, beating Germany and beating the defending champions of the world in a World Cup game, not in a friendly though, in a World Cup game, in the biggest stage of them all, that is going to be a victory a lot of South Koreans will talk about, and I bet this is going to be a game that it's going to be remembered for a very, very long time, to considerably one of the biggest upset that we have seen so far, because this was the game that the almighty Germans has fell down and got eliminated in the World Cup in the group stage. But with Germany, of course, and South Korea getting eliminated, and as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago about Mexico just barely able to move on into the knockout stage. And keep in mind, Mexico coming into this, I thought for sure that they were probably the most comfortable side, because they currently have a 3-point lead over Germany and Sweden, and pretty much they are in the driver's seats of potentially moving on, even though technically they're not. But after what happened in this game, boy oh boy, I would never have thought that a lot of Mexican fans will be sitting on their edge of the seat right near the end of the whistle and just praying that South Korea or Germany will remain at a 0-0 game. Because have Germany actually won this game against South Korea, if Germany got the 3 points, then both teams will be tied at 6 points, and Germany would be moving on because they have a better goal differential, and the Mexican basically just gave up 3 goals in this game. And I know that a lot of Mexican fans will say that, one, the referee was absolutely awful and missed a lot of calls and were mostly against them in terms of the calls, and 2, Sweden played very dirty. I mean, Sweden was literally lunging in. They were being very aggressive in terms of the challenges. But at the end of the day, that doesn't matter, because you were not clinical in this game whatsoever. I mean, it wasn't like Mexico played very bad, but they just weren't very clinical whatsoever. And Sweden was just the more clinical side. And this is probably the best kind of attacking threat that Sweden have played in a long time because, Sweden is not a team that is known for their attacking threat. And yeah, and keep in mind the other thing that is the the reason why Mexico lost this game is that their defense was absolutely dreadful. So, while a lot of Mexican fan will make the excuse about the ref and the fact that Sweden basically kind of played them very dirty, at the end of the day, they shouldn't have to literally sit on the edge of their seat and biting their nail right around the end of the whistle and hoping that Germany does not take the lead against South Korea. I mean, imagine if that actually happens. Holy crap, that would be one of the biggest bottling job in the World Cup history. I mean, that would, in some way that would be kind of unfair because you've seen teams throughout this tournament and other groups that have not even got 6 points and they qualify to the next round, and I think this will be one of the highest, or I think this is going to be tied for the highest kind of points total by a team that did not qualify into the next round, and Mexico almost was that team. But now with Mexico losing this game, and because Mexico lose this game, Sweden of course will leapfrog them in first place because they have a better goal differential, and now Mexico will have to play against Brazil, and that obviously is going to be a very, very good game, and certainly one that a lot of Mexican fans will believe that they can win, because it seemed like so far Mexico have done very well against the bigger team, which is kind of weird, but it's true. They kind of tends to show up whenever they are the underdogs and they play against the bigger team, and they have kind of got a resort against Brazil before with them drawing 0-0 in the last World Cup. Although in the knockout stage, if they do the same thing, they're gonna have to hope they can score a goal in extra time or even win the penalty kick shootout, because a 0-0 draw will not get you to the next round. And the thing about Mexico, and why even though they move on, that is a good thing, the bad news is that they are pinned in that upper bracket in the knockout stage bracket. And let me just tell you that if you look at the bracket right now and you look at the upper part of the bracket, holy crap, it is stacked. It is absolutely stacked with good teams. Teams like France, Argentina, and maybe soon Belgium is going to be there, and Brazil, and all those teams are in that upper bracket, which is also kind of a thing that I will mention in my preview video of how when England play against Belgium, I actually want England to lose that one, because if England does win that one, they will be moving up in the upper bracket, and that will be absolutely hell for them. I mean, the upper bracket is just brutal right now. That every team that is in that lower bracket can consider themselves lucky, and especially for those teams that finish second in the lower bracket, they probably have the luckiest break that they have in the past couple of World Cup. It is gonna be a mayhem in the upper bracket, and in terms of who will fight and scratch their way into the final. But with now Group F all set with Mexico and Sweden moving on, let's talk about Group E. And Group E didn't really have as much of the drama as Group F has. In fact, it was kind of straightforward, with Brazil beating Serbia 2-0, and certainly Brazil deserved to win this game. They were by far the better side and the more dominant side against the Serbian, and certainly this is also good news for Brazil to win this game, because one, I think they definitely get some momentum heading into the knockout stage, and that is something that they desperately need, because so far Brazil has not looked good whatsoever in the knockout stage, and it is pretty much the case for most big teams so far in this tournament, is that the bigger team just tends to want to sleepwalk their way into the knockout stage. And then Switzerland, of course, finished second in Group F, and they confirmed that by drawing 2-2 to Costa Rica. And even though if they lose this game, Serbia would have been out either way, because Switzerland have a 1-point lead over Serbia heading into this final day. And, you know, for this game, I don't know how in the world did Costa Rica not win this. Like, Costa Rica absolutely dominated the first 20 minutes, and I'm shocked the fact that they didn't even score a goal. Like, they were hitting the bar. The Swiss goalkeeper, Jan Sommer, were making some crazy save to try to keep his team in the game, and it just felt like, how in the world does the Ticos not score a goal? And eventually they did score a goal, and it was their center back, Kendall Watson, who of course played for the Whitecaps. I mean, that's crazy of how long it took them to finally break through. And it just also makes me wonder, why in the world did they decide not to play this kind of style in the first two games? Because I feel like for the first two games, Costa Rica went very conservative, which I kind of understand in some point when they play against Brazil, but I kind of didn't understand when they play against Serbia, and why did they go so conservative and not really just kind of go forward, have nothing, just kind of have that feeling of nothing to lose and trying to get a goal. And I really think if they can play like this again, they definitely would beat the opposition. I mean, Switzerland were pretty lucky to get this draw. I mean, for the first 20 minutes, they were literally on the ropes in many ways, and I don't know how in the world did they survive the first 20 minutes without conceding a goal. And then eventually Jamal Lee gets the first goal for Switzerland. That was completely against the run of play, because Costa Rica was absolutely dominating. And then even at the end, Costa Rica was completely dominating the game. The Swiss pretty much just put their foot off the gas because they know that they're going to move on. And yet, the Swiss still got that second goal and still got that lead from Dermich. But unfortunately, Costa Rica scored right into stoppage time with Jan Sommer scoring an own goal. And yeah, that is pretty much it for Group E in terms of the teams that we know that's gonna move on into the knockout stage, with Brazil and Switzerland moving on. And you know, Switzerland, as I talked about a couple of seconds ago, how some teams that finish second in the group and goes in that lower bracket are probably the luckiest team in the past couple of World Cup tournament. Well, Switzerland is one of them, because in the round of 16, they are going to be playing against Sweden, and that is the ultimate wild card match in the round of 16. I mean, can you imagine Switzerland and Sweden in the round of 16? That is going to be very interesting in a way that, you know, both of these teams are not very kind of strong team, but they're facing each other, and there's a chance that both of those teams can, well, not both of those teams, but one of those teams can book themselves into the round of 8. But yeah, that is pretty much it for the review of this. Obviously, the biggest story coming out of today was Germany being knocked out of the group stage and getting eliminated and heading home for this World Cup. And Mexico almost did the biggest bottle job that any team has done in the World Cup so far. And yeah, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of today's action? We got one more day of group stage action, which is tomorrow, and tomorrow's games is not gonna be as excited as this. Well, actually, I take that back. Tomorrow game is gonna be definitely as exciting as this, because, you know, of all the talk of Group H and how I've been keep mentioning Group H as one of the most interesting group. Well, I'm gonna be talking about that after when I finish this video. And then of course Group G is kind of a boring group, because the two teams, Belgium and England, are already moving on. Although, as I mentioned before, I think it's best for England to lose that one, because it's best for them to finish second to get into that lower bracket if they have a chance to go deep in the tournament. But yeah, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of these games, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I will see you guys next time.